Good afternoon, everybody. Congratulations, baseball fans. We've made it. The week of opening day. We'll talk about the Astros' remaining roster decisions, some health updates, and we'll preview the opening series against the White Sox. It's the Sweet 16th episode of Stone Cold Stros, and it starts right now.
The Houston Astros, world champions!
Welcome into Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange. The man in the middle slot is Sports Map Houston's senior content contributor, Charlie Palillo. You can follow him on Twitter at Palillo and read his weekly column on sportsmap.com. Next to him is the guy who edits that column and more. It's sportsmap.com editor and host of ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 FM's Moneyline, Josh Jordan. Follow him on Twitter at JoshJordan975. Charlie, Josh, welcome in.
I'm almost certain you two guys can back me up on this. Barry Manilow, right? Looks like we made it. Hooray for all of us. Play freaking ball. For real.
I don't know about Barry Manilow, but I can back you up on play ball. Guys, I teased it in the opening week is here. Opening day is Thursday. The reigning, defending, undisputed world champions take the field to take on all challengers in an attempt to become the 15th team in MLB history to win back-to-back World Series. Let's cover it this way. We'll cover final roster spots for position players, then pitchers, and then we'll preview the opening series against the White Sox. Before we get into today's topics, Josh, hit us with those housekeeping goodies, please.
You got it. Welcome to our live audience. As you guys are filing your way in, we do this podcast every Monday at 3 p.m. right here on YouTube. And while you're here, please hit like on the video, hit subscribe, ring the bell to get all the notifications. If you prefer listening and don't want to watch, that's cool. Maybe you're working out, you just want to listen to the podcast. We got you covered. Just go to whatever podcast provider that you do. Use them, Stone Cold Stros podcast. That's where you're going to want to search and find us out there, guys. And make sure you follow our parent channel at Sports Map Houston on all of our platforms.
And speaking of siblings or parents, as you can see, I'm rocking the ESPN Houston swag right now. If you see that, make sure you're following them on all your social media feeds as well. When you're not watching or listening to Sports Map content, make sure you're listening to our sister platform on your radio dial at 97.5 and 92.5 FM in Houston. Guys, let's get it going. Okay, let's start with position players. Health updates are as follows. Altuve had that thumb surgery. He's looking at 8 to 9 weeks before he can resume baseball activities. That's not even when he can be back on the roster. That's just when he can start doing those activities. Brantley projected a return in April, although Dusty made it sound like Brantley's stint on the IL will require more than just those 10 days. Astros likely begin the year with Tucker, McCormick, Jake Myers, and Alvarez, assuming Jordan's ready to go, and Maldi, Abreu, Jose Abreu, that is, Maldi, Abreu, Bregman, and Pena in the infield. Utility players, David Hensley, Mauricio Dubon, and either Yainer Diaz or Corey Lee. And now things get interesting. We get into the J.J. Manichevics of the world, the Bly Madras of the world, and a third catcher in possibly either Lee or Diaz. Justin Dearden, Corey Jukes also in the conversation, but those guys are not on the 40-man roster, so the other guys have an advantage with Brantley expected to return in April. So, guys, how do you see them rounding out the outfield in those utility spots?
How they round them out versus how we might choose to round them out. You alluded to the 40-man roster situation. It's not a big deal to clear a spot. They have multiple pitchers that you're saying if you remove them from the 40-man roster, you're not stripping your farm system bare, right? 3 years ago, Enoli Paredes looked like a guy who might be a flamethrower out of the bullpen. Now, he's not a factor. Parker Mashinsky's down the left-handed relief pitcher totem pole. So if you wanted to get Tyler Dearden on the roster because you think that's best for the start of the season for the 2023 Houston Astros, which is kind of the point, that's the way that I would go, and the left-handed bat element to their outfield mix. If I had a better grip on how long Brantley would be out, let's presume it'll be 2 to 3 weeks, where we know Altuve, it's June before he's going to play. I doubt they'll want to carry both the young catchers where they're getting piecemeal playing time. One, should be playing every third game, right? Maldonado should not be starting more than 2 out of every 3 games. So you're going to, split up 1/3 of the starts between Corey Lee and Yainer Diaz. Can Diaz get a taste as a DH maybe against a little left-handed pitching? Abreu has played first base pretty much every day, 150 games plus at 35 years of age. Maybe you want to back him off of that a little bit. And there's a spot start available at first base for Yainer, who's played there a little. Corey Lee got a taste there this spring. Nothing that's going to really warp the roster with the final decision. You mentioned Matajevic. Since he's not a meaningful prospect, a guy they're not worried about, hey, we have to get him every day at bats at AAA for the development of the player, as opposed to Lee and or Diaz. Maybe Matajevic gets that last spot, because we know who the 9 guys basically of the opening day lineup are going to be. And then you have a backup catcher, you have Dubon, and then you have 2 spots left. I might go with both the catchers and Dearden. Pretty sure the Astros won't go with that combo.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning too, Charlie. I'd like to see Dearden, but as we've seen from Brian McTaggart, a lot of others, these guys that aren't on the 40-man roster already, not as likely to make it, even as much as we'd like to see them. They're exciting. With Brantley coming back in April, they just may not want to make that move. Matajevic makes some sense. He can play some first base for you. He can play some left field. I think we're going to see a lot of Jake Myers, Chas McCormick, Kyle Tucker. I think that's what's going to look like early in the season until Brantley comes back, and we'll see how much they play Jordan at DH as opposed to left field.
McTaggart noted that both backup catchers hit well, but didn't really separate themselves from the other. If Diaz makes this team also, and if Diaz and Corey Lee both make this team, is it most likely we see Diaz at first base before we actually see him at catcher?
I'm going to say yes. Lee, they gave a few reps at first base, but I don't think he's considered a serious option to play first base. Yainer in left field. Now, the standards are a little bit different when the Astros could stick Chris Carter out in left field here or there. Carlos Lee was an everyday player there for a few years. So you don't just want to say, the small left field at Minute Maid Park, you can put any galoot out there and he's not going to embarrass you too badly. But for a spot start here or there, as Josh alluded to, I do think they're not going to play Jordan 75% of the games in left field, even if both hands were feeling great. So, Dusty has time to ease into the season, work it out. You'd like to say meritocracy rules, but although sample sizes by definition in spring training are all pretty small, if it was meritocracy, Dearden would be on the opening day roster.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely killed it. Arguably had the best spring training out of everybody this year. So Dearden's showing he could do that. He could play defensively really well, and he's swinging the bat. But we'll see. Dusty likes his veterans too. It's early on that this will probably be pretty fluid as we get started here in April. Who knows when McCullers is going to come back, and as we mentioned, Brantley. So, they'll be juggling these rosters a little bit.
Indeed. I was going to cover the projected lineup, but let's do that when we do our preview. Let's talk arms right now. I haven't seen an update on Lance McCullers. I don't know if you guys have seen anything, but I haven't seen anything, and I'd like to think that no news is good news. I cannot say that confidently. Astros option Matt Gage to Sugarland, which means, once again, poor Dusty has no lefties in his arsenal. It seemed to work out fine last year. The 6 guys we know have spots locked up: Brian Abreu, Maton, Montero, Neris, Presley, and Stanek. So that leaves 3 guys to fight over 2 spots: Belak, Blanco, and Martinez, projected to fight over those last 2 spots. Martinez was steady last year in limited appearances, looked good. Blanco has turned some heads in spring, and Belak can give you multiple innings. He can go deep for you in relief, or maybe even give you a start. What do you see them doing here?
To me, Martinez should make it. He was outstanding at the major league level last season, and just the numbers game precluded him from having any sort of role in the postseason. And again, sample size, we're talking 25, 30 innings, but he was terrific in the big leagues last year. Blanco, I guess by the standards of Astros spring training, was somewhat the pitching story of the spring, and Dana Brown lauding him and a guy, hey, let's stretch him out and let's see what he has his starting capacity for Astros organizational depth going into the season. Well, stretching him out means if early in the season you have a starter going only 3 2/3 innings, high pitch count, or knocked out of the box, Blanco is a 2-3 inning guy. If they think he's better than Bielak, well, there's my answer. Give Blanco the opportunity. He was on the opening day roster last year, actually. Bielak to me is more of an organizational guy who in a pinch can make a spot start here or there. But if Dana Brown's not bluffing about his Blanco enthusiasm, I'd back it up and keep him on the big squad.
Yep, I'm with Charlie here. Blanco, give me the upside, man. I know what Bielak is. Let's see what Blanco can turn into. Seth Martinez, he's shown you everything you need to see. Let's give this guy a shot. As far as McCullers, I saw an update, I believe Saturday. He threw about 30 pitches off a flat ground. Okay. I'm already seeing Rodon with the Yankees is throwing bullpen sessions from the mound and actually working in his breaking ball. And he got a little dinged up, if I remember right, after McCullers. So that's not the most hopeful news we're getting there, that it seems like McCullers is maybe a little behind him and his return.
I think it's a good shot we see Altuve playing for the Astros this season before we see Lance McCullers. And as the Astros factor this in, unless the rotation is springing leaks, right? They have their starting five. Hunter Brown had the little hitch with the back, but he's evidently okay. And then if you get down to Blanco or Bielak, I still don't think where the Astros are going to be in emergency mode. You wouldn't want to rush McCullers back anyway because of the history. And let's be real, the sooner you bring Lance McCullers back, the sooner you're getting to his next injury. So, if the rotation holds up okay and Hunter Brown blossoms, I don't mean that he's Verlander light, but he's just a good fifth starter behind what they have 1, 2, 3, 4. And because of 19 games in 20 days or a doubleheader forced by a rainout, you need another start here or there. I think the Astros, if they know McCullers would hold up healthily through another postseason, they could actually live with him joining the team in August if he's going to pitch lights out for 8-9 starts. And, well, other than the Philadelphia experience, give them some starts in the postseason that you're good with. No rush at all on Lance McCullers, which is good because, if he's basically playing catch, he's nowhere close.
If this is interesting because, speaking of, you're kind of thinking long-term here, is it just me, or if Blanco doesn't make this team, I'd be more apt to, and I know I'm going to get destroyed for this, but I'd almost be more apt to make Bielak the decision, only because maybe they want to keep Blanco stretched out if they think that they may need him in a starting role later down the season, and keeping him in a rotation in Sugarland might actually be a better long-term solution. I know we're all excited to see, Blanco at the major league level, but in a bullpen, that's really stacked, I don't really see where the opportunities would be for him. It would almost seem like long-term thinking, it'd be best for them to keep him in a role where he could stay stretched out and be more valuable to them later in the season in the event, something happens or Lance McCullers can't make it back. Am I wrong in that?
No, I'd agree with that. We do need to keep in mind Blanco's 29. So for all that he has shown this spring, it's not like he's some young phenom that, hey, this is what Forrest Whitley was supposed to be 3 years ago. Forrest Whitley, can he creep into the mix at any point if he flourishes at Sugarland? So again, when you're talking about your conceivable 6th or 7th starter, or where's the spot for the 9th man in your bullpen, it's a reminder that the Astros are king of the mountain for a long list of reasons going into this season.
Yeah, and you're going to need your relief pitchers probably early in the year. We've talked about the schedule. It is a lot of games to start April for the Astros, not many off days. So you're going to need maybe some guys like Seth Martinez to give you a couple innings every now and then. Even your Urquidys of the world and Luis Garcia's, it's early in the season. You don't want these guys pushing it too hard at this point. It's a long way to go. You've already got to worry about McCullers. So let's be smart. Use that depth. You have the best bullpen in baseball. Let's put them to work a little bit here.
Yeah. It's not a long way to go. Opening day. It's Thursday. Astros, White Sox. Just a couple of seasons ago, Astros met the White Sox in the ALDS. And then last season, the White Sox finished 511 games behind the Guardians. So over the offseason, Houston signs away their first baseman. The White Sox used to be the posh pick by the national pundits to be a dark horse. Like, oh, this is going to be the White Sox year. Instead of a dark horse, now they look more likely to be put out to pasture. Charlie, outside of Dylan Cease, who do I fear on this team?
The White Sox have a lineup of lacrosse fingers. Luis Robert, phenomenally talented player. Can he stay healthy and produce? Eloy Jimenez, a monster in the batter's box. Can he stay healthy and produce? Neither of those guys stayed healthy or produced at a high level last season. They hope to have Abreu back, but they move Andrew Vaughn in, who was the 4th pick in the draft, a hitting machine in college. He was a butcher in the outfield, so they're hoping that peace of mind playing first base helps his hitting. Another question mark with a young player. Elvis Andrus is their everyday second baseman going into the season. I just can't take a team seriously doing that. See Texas Rangers last several years at shortstop before last year. Tim Anderson's a fine player, but actually a hair overrated since he walks like once every 3 weeks. So batting 300, his on-base percentage still isn't anything special. A couple of years ago, Yoan Moncada, their third baseman, looked like a breakout star. He broke into pieces last year and was terrible. You go to the rotation, Cease is the truth. And this is one area where, the Astros, you need to look hard to find question marks. But the drop-off post-Verlander, right? Framber's going to be excellent, but Framber wouldn't be the opening day starter if he was on the White Sox. He wouldn't be the opening day starter if he was on the Toronto Blue Jays. Probably wouldn't be the opening day starter with the Yankees, even if it's just because of Garrett Cole's contract. He wouldn't start over Shane McClanahan probably with the Rays. But Framber's damn good. So even if he doesn't pitch like a number 1 ace, you're still solid with him and what you have behind him. But it's not like having Verlander, where every time he went to the mound, you had the advantage in the pitching matchup. White Sox, they have Dylan Cease and Lance Lynn, who had knee problems last year. Older guys who are overweight, that can cause problems. Pitched in the World Baseball Classic. A lot of eggs in the Lance Lynn basket. Lucas Giolito looked like a huge star. He's thrown a couple of gems against the Astros the last couple of years, but overall in 2022, not very good. They won't have Tony La Russa nodding off in the dugout, so I suppose that helps them. But you hit it, Brandon, right? 2 years ago, the White Sox played a halfway competitive series, taking the Astros to 4 in the divisional round. And now a year later, the White Sox are a dark horse at best in a American League Central.
Yeah, I did a little research here, MLB.com, who they project for the starters, the lineup for the White Sox. Interesting, all 5 of their starters they have projected as right-handed pitchers. So we talked about the left-handing hitting Astros who would make the roster. If you're going to try and platoon McCormick a little bit, it'll be interesting. You're going to see all righties there. So, perhaps we'll see them use some left-handed at bats to take advantage of that. The good news about Dylan Cease, forgive me, I found this on Twitter and I don't have the source in front of me, but I trust the numbers. Against the Astros, 0-3, 6.30 ERA and 4 career starts against Houston. And at Minute Maid, only 1 appearance, 3 1/3 innings, 6 earned runs. So if you're an Astros fan, you like to hear that.
Yeah.
In fairness, only one of those starts was last year when Dylan Cease exploded. He was fabulous. He was a runner-up to Verlander for the Cy Young, a 2.20 ERA after having been fair to Midland a couple of years before that. In a single game betting odds matchup, the Astros, of course, are favored Thursday at home, and they have the vastly better team. But if you were purely going by who was the better starting pitcher last year, actually would be advantage White Sox. But their closer, Liam Hendricks, great thoughts his way. He's battling cancer. So not with them to start the season. The 4th starter I didn't mention when running through what the White Sox will be running out this weekend, Mike Clevenger, right? The hideous accusations against him, but no charges coming from it. So he's clear to pitch. He'll be the number 4 guy. But after opening day, each game you line up just the pitching matchup. Edge Astros, edge Astros, edge Astros. And I don't think we should read much into this, right? That Jose Urquidy seems lined up to be the game 3 starter, Luis Garcia, not until game 4. It's probably just a little stylistic breakup. Javier, the harder thrower in game 2. Not that Garcia is overpowering, but I'd say Urquidy is more a finesse guy. So just Dusty and Josh Miller and the brain trust spacing out the starters ahead of Hunter Brown's first start, which will be against the Tigers on Monday.
It's not a lonely island that Cease finds himself on as a victim of that Astros lineup. Jay Roberts brings up an interesting point. Joe Kelly in town could be an interesting weekend. We've mentioned some of the shenanigans, we'll call them that, some those quotes that came out of Joe Kelly's book. It could be some fireworks. Do you think we'll see a Joe Kelly sighting? Do you think the Astros faithful will have something for Joe Kelly?
he makes the team, I would think over 4 games, he does get in at some point. White Sox bullpen is kind of mix and match. I'm going to say Joe Kelly goes against type. I'm pretty sure the book didn't crack the New York Times bestseller list and is not going to. So maybe he can resist what seems to be the character he is or has at least played in the past. No Carlos Correa involved in an Astros White Sox matchup. So I'm going to say Joe Kelly is parsley on the plate. 4 days of Astros White Sox for us to eat up.
Yeah, I bet we see him at some point. Good news, he can't fight Carlos Correa. He's not going to be here. He can't throw at Jose Altuve. So those are some things we won't see happening with Joe Kelly. But yeah, I'm sure he gets in there at some point, and I hope the faithful at Minute Maid make him feel it.
Well, so as we talked about earlier, we kind of have an idea of who we think will make this team, or at least some projections. So let's talk about the projected Astros lineup, because we saw, and we're going off of some of the projections that Brian McTaggart put together. And so I have an order like this. You guys correct me if I have this out of order. I made these notes quickly. Lineup: Pena, Bregman, Alvarez, Tucker, Abreu, McCormick, Hensley, Myers, and Maldi, rounding it out. So we've talked a lot about where Jeremy Pena would hit, and obviously the big wrench, well, one of the wrenches that's been thrown into the gears here is the Brantley, but more recently, it's the Altuve injury. So a lot of things at play here. Pena finds himself in that leadoff spot. Are you surprised to see Pena projected in that leadoff role?
I think there's the lack of what you would think is a reasonable alternative, or someone who would seem to meet the job definition when you include speed top the lineup. Pena's growth year 2, or I suppose the lack thereof, if you want to go downside on it. But it's going to be fun to watch, right? After he became a postseason superstar, what's the build off that? Or was it just an insanely phenomenal 3 weeks? Right? He's not going to hit 330 and slug 700 this year. But if you're going to lead off, an on-base percentage of 315 is not good enough. And that was Pena's batting average after he took off when placed in the 2-hole, right? For the season, he was a tick below 300, which is poor. Now, if he's going to hit with 22 plus home run power, that somewhat offsets that. But overall, for your lineup, your best shot of being as potent as you can be is the guy at the very top to get on base when followed with what the Astros have behind him. The other couple of things that immediately jump out, and no formal pronouncement from Dusty Baker on this yet, but getting your best guys up the most, right? If you're pushing Tucker up, and Abreu's behind him, that they're 4-5, as opposed to trying to spread out the lineup and going with Altuve 1, McCormick 2, or Myers 2. Yeah, if McCormick or Myers breaks out and merits vaulting up the lineup, great. But off what they have, the Astros have still a big 4. Pena's not part of that yet. Regular season Pena, well, maybe he grows into that. But if McCormick's going to be in there every day, and Josh, you mentioned all White Sox right-handed starters, McCormick is lousy. Against right-handed pitching, a sub 700 OPS as opposed to over 900 against lefties. Here, if it's Hensley rather than Dubon getting the first crack, or at least the majority share of playing time at second base in Altuve's absence, he showed well, but we were talking 34 regular season plate appearances. You really can have that line of demarcation at 1 through 5. They're the slug and Stros, wearing out pitchers, running deep pitch counts. But then from 6 on down, particularly against righties, McCormick, Hensley, Myers, Maldi, can be watch that first step down after the 5 spot. It's a doozy.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And as much as I want to see Hensley almost exclusively at second base just to give him a shot, because we know Dubon, great defensively, but not a lot of offense there. I wonder, with Dusty being your manager, Fromber on the mound, game 1, lots of ground balls. Maybe Dubon gets that start in game 1. That would not shock me whatsoever.
You see Tucker, obviously these are projections. We have no idea if this is really where this will end up, but would you be surprised to see Tucker so high? Obviously extenuating circumstances here, but I don't think we've ever seen Tucker in the cleanup role in this lineup, correct?
No, and Abreu has never hit below 5th in his big league career. It's possible when the Astros have all bats in their lineup with Altuve. If you go Tucker 5, Abreu 6. Dusty likes to go righty, lefty to make it tougher to bring in a lefty reliever where you have the lefties clustered. Jordan crushed lefties basically as much as he did righties. Tucker not quite the same. But, working from the projection we're working from, if you're going Bregman, Jordan, Tuck, Abreu, you're going righty, lefty, righty, as opposed to if you want to break it up, the natural would be to hit Abreu 4th behind Jordan and then Kyle Tucker 5th. So you're going righty, lefty. Other than a specific pitcher who just has, amazing splits and chews up left-handed pitching, you're going to still keep your lefties in the lineup. That would be the one thing that I'd say, I think that Dusty might want to go Abreu right, Tucker left. But you know what? Tucker getting on base ahead of Abreu, Tucker can run, right? Abreu, if not a base clogger, certainly is not a guy who motors around the bases. Tucker might be their overall best base runner, base stealer. That would be one argument for me, having him on up ahead of Abreu rather than vice versa.
Yeah, I think whoever's hitting 5th, they're going to get pitched around a fair amount with, the bottom of the Astros order not being what it usually is. So whoever hits 5, I'm not giving them my best stuff. I'm going to let the bottom of the order get me.
Yeah, if you're Dylan Cease opening night, bottom of the 1st inning, the Astros have a threat going. 2 out, 2nd and 3rd. Here's Abreu. You're not intentionally walking him to get McCormick. You're going to certainly pitch against Abreu very gingerly, as opposed to letting your recent teammate batter you in game 1. Again, with McCormick, everyone knows all the stats these days. Certainly the ball clubs do. Right? McCormick against a right-handed pitcher as opposed to Abreu against a right-handed pitcher. It doesn't set us up that, geez, Abreu's getting the damn Barry Bonds treatment. No one's pitching into him. But if you don't have someone behind, again, given the game situation, right, 2 out, no one on in the 4th inning, of course they'll go after Abreu. But in an RBI slot with Abreu's pedigree and McCormick's track record against right-handed pitching, fairly easy call.
Thursday's starter is Fromber, as we talked about. Vegas has his win total, the over-under at 14, I believe, on some books. Do we think that's indicative? Are they reading a lot into the elimination of the shift? Do they really think that there's going to be more ground balls from Fromber leaking out of that infield?
Possibly. I mean, it has to matter somewhat. That's his calling card. He doesn't strike out a ton of guys. The strikeout numbers are good, but they're not Cy Young level strikeout numbers. So I think that's part of it. And they're probably baking in a little bit of regression. And there's a lot of unknown with the Astros right now, especially with all these injuries. And Charlie kind of alluded to it. When you're going number 1 starter against number 1 starter, if Fromber faces off against all aces for his first few starts of the season, those are going to be tough games to come out of with a dub. So yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that too. The numbers for Christian Javier are interesting as well. I'd be a little careful here pushing the over with Fromber. You never know. The one thing with Fromber though is he goes deep in games more than anybody else. So if anybody's going to get you some dubs late in the game, Fromber's your guy. But yeah, I think that's being baked in there a little bit, Brandon.
And there's always that injury element. If a guy misses a chunk of the season, it just kills the over possibility.
Yep.
I think Fromber's a durable workhorse. He throws pretty freely and easily. He also works fairly quickly. I don't think he's going to be disrupted at all by the pitch clock. So again, that wild card of health, which is the biggest wild card in life for all of us. He goes against Cease in the opener, but as soon as off days get staggered at all, right? The Astros have an off day on a Monday. He's not going to make 28 of his 32 starts against another team's number 1 starter. And half the league, he's clearly better than that guy anyway, in contrast to the teams that I mentioned. Well, if he was with the Blue Jays, he wouldn't be starting over Alex Manoah opening day. But I like over. What did he win last year? 18?
17.
17. Okay, 2 months of no Altuve. Is that specifically going to cost Fromber 3 wins? I like Fromber at over 14.5. And one of you guys mentioned earlier when we were talking, what was the number on Javier?
If I recall, it was like 11.
11,
like that.
I think.
I mean, that seems fish in a barrel easy, doesn't it? Right. The only concern is, what are we not getting? He made 25 starts last year, did blow through his career high in professional innings pitched. And, there is some data that a guy who makes a more than 40 inning jump year to year, bigger injury risk, regression to mean. I don't know that we've seen enough from Javier to say there's regression. In 25 starts, his ERA was like 2.64. He gives up like 5 hits per 9 innings. Bigger surprise if Javier wins 10 games or wins 20 games. 11 and a half. It's really 11 and a half. I want on Mattress Max next John to Vegas or Lake Charles.
I mean, he won 11 last year, but he did start 25 games to your point. He struggled with not having a lot of runs scored from him last year. That kind of hurt him a little bit, which, you can't really control if you're a pitcher.
No, but that could be a concern again. I mean, Charlie talked about it being baked into the number with Fromber. I mean, Altuve's out, Brantley's out. Yeah, there's no clear timetable on those guys. Jordan's was, the hand thing. We assume he'll be, we assume he'll be ready for opening day. We don't know that. He also had stints with the hand thing. He didn't go on the IL for it last year, but he did sit for several games about it, and it kind of threw him off towards the end of the season as well. Sitting all those games, resting up to get his hands right. He, he was not in time when he came back. He didn't hit great in the postseason outside of, 3 really good games when he had really crucial home runs in them. But outside of that, he was not super steady during the postseason. So maybe, it's not a narrative about the pitchers regressing as much as it is. Maybe they think the offense will regress a little bit. And I guess that's a fair assessment considering, what you're looking at here, and maybe just the overall odds, right? Just the team regressing to the mean. They've been so dominant over the past 6 seasons that maybe it's just kind of a betting on the regression just overall.
Yeah, obviously going into this season, it's not as good a team as what won the World Series last year, compounded, of course, by Altuve being out for the first 2 months and however long after that. But if they, by Astros platinum standards, fall apart, or unless it all goes to hell in a handbasket, and they go 90-72, I think someone's still winning 15 games. So Fromber and Javier 1-2 in their rotation. I'd still go over even if the team does drop off somewhat sharply. And that's why, it's fun to play that we don't get any respect card, and it's part of the fans rally to want to be us against the world and so forth. Anyone seen anyone's power rankings going into the season that do not have the Astros number 1? Because they won 106 last year. They cannot come particularly close to that and be the best team in baseball, because the Dodgers won 111. I mean, they've turned over half their lineup with prospects and lose Gavin Lux for the year already and have a couple questions in their rotation. They'll still be good, but they're not going to win 111. But just sticking to the American League, the Yankees won 99, 60% of their rotation starting the season on the injured list. And then you drop down to what? The Guardians, who won 92, the Mariners 90. So the Astros have a nice comfort level. Right, their margin for error is not what it was with last year's team. But if they go from 106 wins all the way down to 95, the number they won when Verlander missed all of 2021, I think 95 still wins the division. Good chance it's still the best record in the American League, or at least the second best record in the American League, and you avoid the 2 out of 3 wild card, and you're right there in October to try to make another run.
Yep, and I would say with Javier too, we talked about it. He doesn't go super deep in games so far. We'll see if he takes that jump this year. So if you want to win a lot of games, you got to go 5+. So, we'll see. And Javier's done a great job of being just a little more accurate, walking less guys. We saw that in the playoffs. He made some adjustments, keeping his front shoulder closed a little longer. So if he keeps that up and he walks less guys, that means he can go deeper into games for the Astros this year.
So if we knew as point of fact, only one of them is going over his personal total. Fromber over 14.5 or Javier over 11.5.
I'd go Javier.
Yeah, me too. The Fromber
boringly unanimous.
No, I know, but that one does seem like the obvious one. Whereas Fromber, maybe there is regression. I need to see what what the shift or the lack thereof does to ground ball pitchers, especially Fromber, and especially against left-handed hitters. So
And throw in the infield defense figures to be lesser too. While Altuve is out, Hensley, Dubon, whomever, and Abreu, who's competent, but he's not Gurriel with the leather.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned power rankings, and so I want to quickly. I know we're 35 minutes into this, but I wanted to quickly touch on this because Josh, you brought this up in pre-show. 20, we talked about 26-man rosters. FoxSports.com's Jordan Schusterman gave his MLB 26 and under power rankings, and that's teams with players that are 26 years of age or younger. And let's just do the top three here. Number 3 is the Orioles. Number 2, the Braves. Number 1, Houston Astros. Charlie, we've seen a lot of these interestingly constructed lists where you kind of outside the normal, power rankings. There's always, whenever we talk about the organization, what the farm system looks like, the Astros typically ranked lower. So it's interesting. I don't know why the arbitrary cutoff at 26, but the 26 number certainly allows them to be higher ranked because of the guys on the roster right now. But what does this mean to you? Obviously, this is just, this is an article to get clicks, and we clicked on it. But what does this say to you about the longevity of the Astros and the staying power of this roster that's constructed by Jim Crane and the number of GMs that have been under him?
The last legs are not in sight. They're still a good ways down the track. Now, this cut line is rather fortuitous for the Astros, right? You'd think 25, midpoint between 20 and 30, the more natural number. 26 and under qualifies Christian Javier, just turned 26 a couple days ago. Kyle Tucker turned 26 a couple of months ago. Luis Garcia is 26. So if you went to 25 and under, well, then the Astros plunged down the list. Jordan turns 26 this year. He'd still qualify, I think, as the 25 line. But it reminds me, Jeff Van Gundy, somewhat faux outrage years ago when the Rockets had some degree of relevance, railed when asked about Yao Ming coming close to averaging 20 and 10 one season, 20 points and 10 rebounds. And Jeff was, what if he averages 19 and 9? He sucks. So, if you draw the line at 25 or 26, that's heart of prime, young, vibrant male vitality. And the Astros have a whole bunch of it for a while to come.
They do. And I thought it was an interesting breakdown. They kind of give you a 1 to 10 ranking for your big league position players. Astros got a 10. Jordan, Tucker, Pena, we hit on that. That makes sense. And the big league pitchers they hit on as well. Javier, Garcia. They included Abreu in there as well, which is, who can argue with that, the way he pitched at the end of last year? And then Hunter Brown, of course. But they make the point that it's the prospects where the Astros don't get the check marks, right? The prospect position players, they got a 2 out of 10, only really citing Drew Gilbert, Jacob Melton. And then finally, the prospect pitchers, it's a lot of young guys most of us aren't super familiar with, but then they also throw in a wild card of, what if Forrest Whitley turns into something. But to Charlie's point, what they're getting at here is it's not the end of the world if the Astros rank kind of low in prospect position in prospect pitching, because they're going to be good for several more years, and that's why they hired Dana Brown, is to replenish that farm system. So as they're still winning, they can tack on some of these prospects, and then who knows, and in 2 or 3 years, maybe they're ranked at 8 or 9 on this instead of a 2 or a 3.
And no futzing around the fact that, of course, you'd love to have the Astros teaming with the next wave of can't miss type guys, Bregman, Correa, McCullers, Tucker, and have their farm system ranked in the top 5. Well, it's tough to be there when you're great. Credit to the Dodgers for maintaining, though it's still just one World Series title for them in this era. But within the American League West, maybe the Rangers make a huge leap. And they do have what's considered a top 5 farm system. Mariners farm system now, no good. Angels farm system, perpetually no good. A's, doesn't matter, utterly irrelevant. So the Astros are still working from a position of strength, as we've covered here on more than one occasion. Start with the starting pitching, where almost everyone is under control for at least 3 more years. And then you have Jordan and Tuck, 3 years at least in Tucker's case, starting 6 for Jordan, Altuve and Bregman this year and next, and then you figure out beyond and time for a Gilbert and, one other outfielder to develop. Jacob Melton probably will get the first, hope wish on that. But one other thing on the point, and, talent wins over time, but player development, where the Astros have excelled in this era, matters a whole bunch. And Dana Brown's pedigree with the Braves on this as well. You can't take chicken, and turn it into chicken salad, but you can upgrade it. If you can turn 6s into 8s, if not 10s, and especially when you build on that and accrue those sorts of upgrades. Think of University of Texas football. You can recruit all the 5 stars and 4 stars you want. Well, if you don't have a good player development system, you're not going to matter over time. The Astros have checked pretty much all boxes. The farm system is in an ebb phase, but they can get more out of less because of player development as Dana Brown builds up where they can get more out of more because there's just a higher threshold, higher talent threshold for that next generation of, 5-star prospects.
Yeah, we saw a guy like Rafael Montero take a step up in his career and have his best career year with the Astros last year. The Astros hope that Ronel Blanco can make a similar jump in his career because those guys are in similar age. One minor correction is that the Dodgers, with one Mickey Mouse title in the last decade, it's not an episode of Stone Cold Stros if I don't take the opportunity to be real petty with a rival. And so as the show winds down, I want to remind everybody, we got a bunch of people that are still here watching us live. If you're here watching us, please hit that like button. We do appreciate it. And if you're watching us after the fact, hit like too. You can hit like too and comment. And this is where you can actually take the opportunity to comment because this is where we give our bottom line question of the week. I toss out a question to the guys and everyone that's in the chat in the comment section. You get your opportunity to respond back and we will read those replies right now. So guys, you don't know what this question is because I just came up with it. Who do you think will be the first Astro to hit a home run in the 2023 regular season?
I guess I'll go first. If we go by this projected batting lineup, give me Jeremy Pena. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Channel George Springer with the lead off the season opener with a home run.
Yep.
Cease and desist order for Dylan to open his season with a bang. I'll go Kyle Tucker.
Those are good
Not
guesses.
like he's on a vengeance tour for losing his arbitration hearing, and I need to just destroy baseball planet Earth this year to grease the skids for. You better give me that 10-year contract extension at $250 million. But we're just chucking darts at the board, and Tuck's going to make a run at 30-30. And maybe it won't be opening night. But as with Josh's choice, Pena's going to be in the lineup the first night, and the second night, and the third night, and the fourth night. I'll go Tucker, leaving Jordan on the board for you, Brandon. But if he doesn't hit it opening night, do they play him consecutive games, treat the hands gingerly? You could go Bregman, or you're going to stun us all.
I'm gonna go different here. I'm gonna go because you kind of shamed me on taking the same answer as Josh earlier. So I'm gonna go way different. I'm gonna say Jose Abreu is going to have a welcome to Houston moment and being the first Astro this season to hit a home run, just because I think that'd be a cool narrative and moment for him on this team. I like to think that, maybe Jose acclimates himself real well, especially against his former team. Maybe he sees a little bit, sees something coming. All right, let's get to these answers here. Heather's first out of the gate. She says Pena as well. Steve's with me. Steve says Abreu. Wallace is going to go Pena as well. We got to vote for your daddy. That's a good one. I probably should have picked that one, but I'm not interested in being right. Professor Rufus is with me. He says Jose Abreu as well. We get another vote for Pena from Astro Wharf. Eddie Ruiz says Bregman. That's a great one. Marty says that as well. Taylor's going to go with Jordan. John's with me. He says Abreu as well, assuming he means Jose Abreu and not Brian Abreu. Warren Jones is going to say Alex, which I assume is Bregman. Pena is the vote by Bam. Taylor says not Dubon. So she's taking the field. But Professor Rufus actually comes back and says he changes his vote. Can't do that, Professor Rufus. Mauricio Dubon is his vote. But he qualifies that and says inside the park. And then Ben-Hur also agrees with me as well and says Abreu. So you know what? I had a lot of people join me in the Jose Abreu vote. So I don't know. I think
He's
either
familiar
way
with their staff, Brandon.
Yeah. It's there's some good vibes around that. So we want to thank everyone who just participated in that. And if you're not live with us, hey, you can still comment after the fact in the comment section. Make sure you're commenting. If you want to hear us talk about something or have suggestions for the show, and you're not too mean-spirited about it, please give us some comments and just let us know what you want to hear on future episodes. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank my co-hosts Charlie and Josh for joining me today to talk some baseball. We will be back here next week, Monday, 3 p.m. live.
Can I say one thing, Brandon?
Yeah, please.
We are so close to 20,000 subs, guys. We are so close. Please just push us over the edge. That would mean a lot for the channel. Ring the bell, hit subscribe. Then you get alerts like when we go live. So if you forget and it's Monday at 3:05, you're going to have that alert. You'll know about it. Please help us get us over 20,000. It would mean so much to us.
Well said. And we do appreciate all the support. We appreciate the 19,000 plus who've already subscribed to the channel already. There's a lot of different options on this platform and others to consume as far as Astros content and everything else. We know we're in competition with everything else. And so when Josh isn't watching our stuff or producing our stuff, he's watching other stuff on YouTube as well. I am as well. You can watch and listen to anything. So we do appreciate you choosing us. And if you want to choose us again, we will be back here again live 3 p.m. on Monday. The season will be going. We'll actually be talking about real games that actually count in the record books. And until then, we do appreciate it. Go Stros.